Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for joining this webinar. I'm Olivier Baudelet from the European Commission, DG Regional and Urban Policy, and I'm in charge of this impact project. Impact is an initiative by the Commission that we are implementing together with the OECD. Our ambition is to have more cross-border CLNDs. So far in Europe, we have very few of them, but we think it's really useful because each time we talk to someone about LEADER, which is the equivalent for rural development, the people tell us that they like it, that it's really great for the communities, and that it's also really what Europe should be doing for its citizens. And here, what we want to do is the same as LEADER, but in cross-border areas. So cross-border community-led local development. So through Impact, we have two objectives. The first one is to promote the cross-border CLNDs across Europe. And the second is to establish already a number of them, a number of cross-border CLNDs who would be operational at the end of the process. And for that, we aim at about 30 all across Europe. And that's why we will launch a call, and that's the purpose of the webinar today. The 30 pilots, they will benefit from an expert, which will be free of charge. And the idea is that the expert will bring the communities together. So the communities on each side of the border, it brings them together. The expert would then explain what is a cross-border CLND, what are the benefits of it, why it can be good for these communities, and also how to do it concretely. The expert would then facilitate the discussion between the different communities so that through the discussion, they can agree on what they need, they can agree on what should be done, and then they also agree on the solutions, which would be projects. And the process will lead to a mini strategy, not something very long, and it's about 15 pages, but basically a document which reflects what has been discussed and which also identifies the projects that should be done in the coming years. After that, we in the Commission, we will make the link with the Interreg programs so that the projects can receive funding. And the OECD will also draw the lessons from the 30 pilots in order to establish guidance and toolkits which can be useful for all those communities, much broader than the 30, who want to establish in future cross-border CLNDs. When we look at the number of participants of the webinar today, we are quite optimistic that we will have good pilots and hence more cross-border CLNDs in the future. We believe really that it's something which will bring the EU closer to the citizens because they are really working with communities. And it's also cross-border CLNDs, a way to bring local customized solutions. So I wish you a very good webinar, and I wish you also a good application process, and we are looking forward to see your application in the coming weeks. Thank you very much and have a good webinar.
Thank you very much, Olivier, for your opening words. Now I'd like to please pass the floor to Verinia Michelun.
Great, thanks, Stefan. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us. It's really a pleasure to be here at this webinar on the Impact Project, and also to join the Commission in welcoming you on this initiative for cross-border regions. My name is Verinia Michelun. I lead the OECD's work on governance and strategic planning for regional development. Our work looks at how multi-level governance supports regional and local development outcomes in a variety of ways. We examine how governments can plan strategically, how they coordinate among different levels of government, how they engage with stakeholders, how they build trust in public institutions. And we also look at the administrative capacity needed to plan, to invest, to monitor, evaluate, and learn from evaluation effectively. And all of these elements are directly relevant for our cross-border cooperation work and for the development of cross-border regions. And so we're very excited about this impact initiative that we're presenting. It builds on recent OECD work that was supported by DG Regio. In 2023 and 2024, we worked with 5 European cross-border regions and assessed how different governance arrangements can help address the specific challenges and opportunities that cross-border regions face. The work resulted in a report that highlighted the strong potential of the EU's cross-border regions and examined why many actually lag behind non-border regions on a range of different socioeconomic indicators. So, for example, in 2023, we saw that unemployment in border regions was, on average, 6% higher than in non-border regions. We also looked at governance mechanisms, such as the EGTCs, the European Groupings of Territorial Cooperation. And these are governance mechanisms that border regions use to address their gaps, the sort of socioeconomic development gaps, and act on different shared opportunities. And these opportunities include improving access to healthcare across borders, to strengthening cross-border public transport connections, and to building local tourism potential. It also provided some very practical guidance for local, national, and international policymakers on how to set up and manage effective cross-border governance bodies so that they could strengthen the resilience of border regions and their socioeconomic performance. So the Impact Project takes this one more step, and it looks at participatory governance. It's very much grounded in the concept of participatory governance, because evidence shows that involving communities, citizens, businesses, civil society organizations, involving communities leads to stronger and more sustainable development outcomes. And I think what's important here is that engagement has to go beyond occasional consultation or beyond consultation that is too late to make an impact. Consultation really and participatory governance really needs to be embedded in strategic planning for regional development initiatives, from the design to the implementation to the evaluation. And this approach really helps build trust between communities and government. For the communities, it builds trust that government listens and responds to local needs. And for government, it builds a trust that communities are valuable and active contributors to the region's development and that they can be turned to help support the government objectives. So the Impact Initiative is also about experimentation. It promotes testing new partnership models and new approaches to address cross-border challenges such as depopulation, environmental degradation, exposure to natural emergencies such as wildfires, and limited attractiveness for investment for residents or visitors, or other challenges that your own cross-border regions are facing. Our hope is that by working with cross-border regions and identifying sort of new, more innovative community-led models, will help cross-border regions throughout the EU and ideally beyond build stronger community-led initiatives that will then also help them really realize their full potential. And finally, I think the remarkable interest in today's webinar, there are over 1,000 registered participants, and I think we have about over 700 of them already online, shows a clear and shared wish to strengthen cross-border regions through more inclusive and innovative governance. We really hope that today's webinar will answer your questions, will give you more insight about the project, will help make you as excited about this project as we are. And we really look forward to working with many of you in the months ahead. I'd like to thank you again for joining us and thank you in advance for your attention. And I'd also like to give our sincerest thanks to the European Commission and DG Regio especially for their continued support and for the trust that they place in the OECD to lead this work. Thank you very much and enjoy the webinar.
Terrific. Many thanks to both Olivier and Verinia for the opening words. Now let's turn to the meaty part of the webinar, the presentation of the project. Let me actually change slides. So here you see a little bit the outline of what we're going to be discussing and doing during this webinar. So first we'll address the project context, objectives, outputs, geographical focus, and really sort of highlight what support will be provided to the pilot regions, what they can gain through this initiative, and highlight the preliminary timeline. Second part, we'll address the call for applications from cross-border regions. So what the eligibility and assessment eligibility criteria are, what are the assessment considerations, what is the application and selection process, but then also sort of highlighting expected commitments from the selected pilot regions. Afterwards, we will discuss the process of identifying and mobilizing experts, and this includes also the process of matching the selected experts with the selected pilot regions. And then during the final part, and really sort of the most important part, we'll be addressing questions that we received over the past few days and take the questions that you can and that you are likely already putting in the chat. But before going into the actual project, I would like to ask my colleague Juan to start the first poll. And if people can please answer this first question, that would be terrific, just so we know where all the participants are coming from. Leave it open for about 20 more seconds. Several participants from Ukraine, I see, from Albania, Bosnia-Herzegovina. No participants yet from Andorra. Almost all of the eligible countries are represented by at least one or a few participants. That is really excellent to see. Let me just keep it open for another 15 seconds as we're about at 500 responses. See no participants from Luxembourg, Liechtenstein, and Malta. Italy, several. Terrific. Many thanks to all. Okay, I think that gives an excellent indication of the widespread interest. Thank you all very much again for your time and interest in joining this call. Juan, if you can close the poll. Terrific. Thank you very much. Share the results now. There we go. Okay, let me move to the nitty-gritty. So before presenting what the project is about, I would just like to start a little bit with the broader context in which this project is placed, and building on some of the elements that Olivier and Verinia already called out. So first, cross-border regions or border regions matter. In the EU, they represent 40% of the territory, almost 30% of the population, but also about 30% of gross domestic product. Yet on average, cross-border regions tend to underperform compared to non-border regions. In addition to the statistic that Verinia already mentioned, I think it's interesting to highlight that, for instance, in 2021, GDP per capita in EU border regions was about 14% lower than the EU average. Again, there are important variations in the border regions within countries and at the EU level, but these are on average, border regions underperform compared to non-border regions. These gaps are not accidental. They reflect a series of often overlapping challenges. These can include regulatory differences, but also territorial and administrative obstacles, and importantly, language and cultural differences, which should not be overlooked. And these barriers have practical implications for citizens and businesses alike. For example, they can result in gaps in service delivery, for example, gaps in healthcare access. They can result in misaligned infrastructure, such as roads, rails, or energy systems. And they, for businesses importantly, they can also result in fragmented labor markets. In short, as you all well know, border regions often face structural disadvantages that require tailored governance solutions. This brings me to the right side of the slide, to community-led local development, or CLD. Throughout the presentation, we'll be using this abbreviation CCLD quite a lot. So CCLD is a place-based approach to local development. It is driven crucially by local partnerships. It brings together governmental actors, at the regional and local levels, but also non-governmental actors, including civil society organizations, businesses, and citizens. And as Olivier already called out, it has been widely used in Europe for over a long period of time, notably through the LEADER initiative. And evaluations show that CCLD delivers clear results. On job creation, for example, data from an evaluation of the European Maritime and Fisheries Fund show that CCLD was the fund's most effective measure in creating new jobs. It also delivers results in mobilizing private investment. An evaluation from Galicia in Spain is helpful in this matter. It showed that for every euro of public support, CCLD leveraged on average €1.06 in private investment. CCLD also empowers communities. It gives decision-making power on local priorities, on local priorities and on concrete investments to community stakeholders. Thereby, it turns local actors from more passive beneficiaries into active partners of their community's development. And importantly, the fourth point is that CCLD builds trust and networks. It connects non-governmental and public actors who otherwise may not work together closely. Yet despite this track record, as Olivier already mentioned, CCLD is rarely applied in cross-border context. This suggests a clear untapped potential, and this is precisely the gap that the Impact Project initiative seeks to address. So building on this context, let me now turn to what the Impact Project is about and what it intends to achieve. As you can see, critical piece of information, Impact stands for the Interact mechanism for promoting active communities and territories. We'll be referring to Impact or the Impact Project for the rest of the presentation. It's a 2-year initiative, again, as highlighted, funded by the Regio and implemented by the OECD. The overall objective is, I think, clear from the slide. It is to strengthen community-led local development in cross-border regions by supporting cross-border partnerships in designing joint place-based strategies, and with the sort of the impact objective being to contribute to local economic growth and performance and to resident well-being. And concretely, the project has 2 specific objectives. First, it is to support up to 30 cross-border regions to establish governance partnerships and critically to develop and implement cross-border strategies, CCLD strategies. And the second objective is to generate long-term support from Interact programs for cross-border CCLD. So this project is about immediate support to cross-border regions, and it's about shaping future policy support and financial support to cross-border community-led development. So let me briefly clarify the geographical scope of the initiative. As I think already represented in the results of the poll that you all just took, we're targeting cross-border regions from all 27 EU member states, as well as those of selected neighboring countries such as Andorra, Liechtenstein, Norway, and Switzerland, IPA countries that you see listed on the slide, as well as Moldova and Ukraine. So a very diverse set of countries, which I think adds to the point on experimentation that Verinia mentioned. There's a lot to learn from the different contexts on what works, what doesn't, and what tools are necessary to enable working CCLD. So now let me briefly outline some of the main outputs of the project. So what will this project in a very concrete sense result in? First, we'll provide a CCLD, or community-led local development strategy design package, as we have dubbed it, to the 30 pilot regions. This package will include practical guidelines, templates, and tools, as well as tailored expert advice for the development and adoption of CCLD strategies, and will also include considerations for funding mobilization and implementation. The aim is really to provide hands-on support throughout the strategy design process. In addition, we'll organize a series of peer learning and knowledge exchange events, most of them in Paris and one in Brussels. The aim here is to bring together representatives of the pilot regions, selected experts, but also for some Interreg program representatives, with the objective here being to facilitate exchange and reflection on CCLD, what works, what doesn't, what tools are needed to improve results, how to secure project funding, etc., and how to secure also longer-term policy and funding support. Third, and building on this exchange, we'll develop an analytical tool. And here the objective is to build on the lessons from the 30 pilot regions and have the tool sort of particularly aimed at non-pilot cross-border regions on how they can design, adopt, and implement CCLG strategies. And in this way, the project goes beyond the work with the 30 pilot regions. Fourth and finally, we will produce a synthesis report that should reflect on the value of community-led local development for cross-border regions, to reflect on the experience and the lessons learned from the pilot regions, and to provide targeted policy recommendations for policymakers, whether at the national, local levels. Now, let me turn to what I think is a critical part in this webinar, what selected pilot regions can gain from participating in impact as pilot regions. So first, it is expert guidance. Each pilot will be supported by between 1 and 3 experts, depending on the number of languages spoken in the region, because we think it's critical for the supported hands-on support to be delivered in the local languages. The expert will provide support to develop and advise to develop the cross-border CCLD strategy. Second, will provide practical tools and templates that the pilot regions can support during this strategy design process and beyond. And to move in a way also from strategy design to overall implementation. Third is pilot exchange or peer-to-peer exchange, which I already mentioned before. Fourth, advice on funding mobilization. We'll really stress that during the expert advice that will be delivered to each pilot region, as well as in the multiple events, the peer learning events, we will cover the capacities needed and processes for mobilizing and managing funding to make the CCLD strategies deliver on their objectives. Fifth, we will create, I think through the peer learning and exchange events, will enable direct engagement, direct contact between the pilot regions and the program authorities. The regions will be able to, for example, present the value of their CCLG strategies, share their local experiences, and critically make a strong case for direct support in the next programming period. And finally, the project will help pilot regions gain visibility at the national and international levels, for example, through their participation in the international events, through references to the pilot region's work and innovations in the OECD report, but also through project communication activities. And I think this is something important to highlight. Selected regions will not receive direct financial support to develop or implement the CCLD strategy or to implement related projects. The support provided under the initiative is, as you can see from the previous slides, it's really technical and strategic in nature. The only funding that will be provided, direct funding, is to support the participation of pilot region representatives in knowledge exchange activities in Paris and Brussels. But we also, through the different activities, would like to sort of create the capacities and the processes for the regions then afterwards to in a way support mobilizing initiatives, funding mobilizing initiatives, but that direct funding will not be provided through the initiative. And then sort of my last slide before I hand the floor to Alex, just like to walk you through the indicative timeline for the project. First is that up to 3 calls for applications are foreseen to be launched between February. First call is already out, as many of you already know, and August 2026. Again, my colleague Alex will discuss this in more detail in a minute. Second point, the identification and mobilization of CCLD experts who will work with the selected pilot regions will take place in parallel. The support that the experts will provide for the design of the CCLD strategies is expected to run from mid 2026 to the second quarter of 2027. The knowledge exchange activities will mostly be organized next year, building on the results from the actual work with the pilot regions. And the analytical tool and synthesis report will follow, with final outputs expected by the end of 2027, third quarter and fourth quarter. Please note, however, this is not cutting stone, and it may evolve depending on how the selection process of the pilot region goes, but this should give important guidance. And then now I'd like to pass the floor to Alex.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Alex Durand, and I'm also a policy analyst at the OECD. I'm going to be walking you through the call for applications from pilot regions myself. First, we're going to pop up onto the screen, Juan, if you wouldn't mind, another poll. This poll asks, what type of organization or institution do you represent? We're hoping to better understand where you're coming from so that we can kind of tailor the information that we provide to you about the call. I'll leave this open for a few seconds so you can answer. All right. I think we can go ahead and end the poll and share the response so you all can see who else is on the call. What I'm seeing is we have representatives not only from national government, but regional and local governments. We have CSOs who have joined us, as well as businesses, LAGs and FLAGs, as well as other cross-border governance bodies, and some other bodies. We'll look forward to learning who you are later. Juan, if we can take down the poll, and I'll carry on. This section is designed to explain who can apply, how the application process works, and what are the commitments that are expected from applicants and successful pilot regions. Next slide, please. So first, who can apply? I draw your attention to the musts on the left hand of the screen. Applications must be submitted by legal entities that are located in eligible countries. I'll put that list back up again in the next slide. Applications must also be joint across the border or borders. The must-nots, then, are simple. There are only two. Individuals cannot apply, and national governments cannot apply. We've put up a few examples of eligible applicants on the screen: local regional authorities, non-governmental organizations, local action groups, LAGs, fishery local action groups, FLAGs, tourism offices, European groupings of territorial cooperation, EGTCs, and Euro regions. This is just an indicative list. We've received quite a lot of questions from you already about eligibility. We'll be coming back to some of them in the Q&A. The important thing is really to understand and respect the musts and the must-nots on both sides of this slide. Next slide, please. Well, as I mentioned, and as Stefan has also mentioned, applicants must be located in the eligible countries that are listed on the screen now. These include the EU member states, plus Andorra, Liechtenstein, Norway, Switzerland, the Instrument for Pre-Accession Assistance countries, IPA countries, and Moldova and Ukraine. Next slide, please. Each application will be submitted by a lead partner on behalf of their cross-border partnership that will be working together over the course of the project. These partnerships must have at least one partner from each side of the border or the borders. They must designate their lead partner, and they must submit a signed joint declaration of partnership and commitment. This is part of the application form. It confirms that, among other things, all of the partners agree to work together throughout the course of the project. There are a few nice to have characteristics for project partnerships that are nonetheless not strictly required for eligibility. These are prior experience with CLLD or cross-border cooperation and existing cooperation structures. Next slide, please. What to expect from the timeline for applications. As you all know, applications are currently open and have been since the 10th of February. They will be open through the 10th of April. They're due on the 10th of April. The week of the 20th April is when applicants will hear back from us of their selection results. And in May, we expect that the selected regions are going to start the work. They will start working towards their CLLD strategy and the other activities of the project with their OECD experts that they've been matched with. We'll get into this a little bit more later. Next slide, please. One note, there may be up to 2 additional application rounds, and we've already received some questions from all of you about this. However, this is important to note. Future rounds will only be organized if places for participating pilot regions remain available. For this reason, we encourage you to apply early because those additional rounds of applications are not guaranteed. Next slide. So, what should you expect from the application process? Once you've submitted your completed application, all of these applications will go through an eligibility check. First eligibility check of the factors that we've already mentioned. A selection panel will then assess the applications. At this point, the assessors will be considering the content of the applications that you submit and how it aligns and matches with impact's objectives, and also diversity and balance across the participating regions. And as I mentioned, we will communicate the results to you by during the week commencing with the 20th of April. Next slide. What is expected from the selected pilot regions? Stefan has already touched upon this, but I'm going to give an outline very explicitly. Selected regions commit to designing and adopting a cross-border CLLD strategy, working closely with the OECD experts that are matched with them, who are going to provide online and in-person technical advice, coaching, and other support. We also commit to supporting the organization and the management of local activities that enable you to engage with the experts. You commit to participating in knowledge exchange and peer learning activities, both online and in person, as well as facilitating information exchange with the OECD project team. We might, for example, ask for information during the course of the project, and you would have to provide the information. And finally, we ask that you provide input and feedback on draft analytical work that the OECD prepares so that we can make sure that the OECD outputs that are coming from this project reflect your insights and your needs. Next slide, please. One important note, the project's working language is English. However, do note that the support that selected regions receive from experts will be provided in the local languages. And also note that for the knowledge exchange and peer learning events, we are going to do our absolute best to provide simultaneous interpretation to try to ensure that language is not a barrier to participation in these events. Right, with that, I'll hand it back over to you, Stefan, to tell us a little bit about the experts.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Yes, now just a few slides on how experts are actually engaged in the project, the type of work that they are supposed to deliver, how they are identified and matched. But before going into detail, I would like to just ask Juan to launch the second or the third poll of the day. So the question is, are you a CLLD expert interested in supporting the pilot regions? Just for us to know how many potential experts we have with us online. So I think this clearly shows that a majority of the participants are interested potential applicants, but we still have a sizable group of of CCLD experts. Let me just open keep the poll open for a couple of seconds, so you'll to afterwards see the results. Okay, end the poll and share the results. And you'll see that about 32% of the respondents so far is indeed a CCLD expert interested in supporting the pilot regions. That is terrific. Then this section is particularly relevant for you. Let's move to the next slide. So let me briefly explain the role of the CCLD experts in actually supporting the 30 pilot regions. So experts will be hired to provide hands-on and importantly part-time support over a period of approximately 4 or 6 months. This support includes both remote work, but also importantly work in the region, typically 1 or 2 weeks at least on the ground in every region. Travel costs for these missions will be covered by the project. Experts, as you could note from one of the previous slides that we presented, they will deliver training and coaching to build the capacity or strengthen the capacity for CCLD strategy design and implementation. They will facilitate stakeholder processes, for example, workshops to build partnerships, to identify shared development priorities, to jointly discuss draft versions of the CCLD strategy. Importantly, they will obviously also review draft strategy sections and provide technical feedback to enhance the clarity, the coherence of the different sections, to reflect on stakeholder feedback that was obtained through the workshops. And here it's really important to stress that the responsibility for the actual strategy development lays with the cross-border region. The experts will provide input, can help review, and can comment on, but the strategy will not be developed by the experts. Obviously, to ensure that there's a strong ownership for the strategy, and the strategy design process also a process through which capacity for CCLD is built within the pilot community. And the experts will, sort of as the last point, will also advise on cross-border governance models and partnership arrangements, as we realize that not all of the applicants will already have an EGTC established that can support CCLD or lags or flags. So the experts can also provide advice on this part, on how to build or strengthen the governance model supporting CCLD. Okay. Now, let me briefly explain how we will identify and match the experts with the selected pilot regions. The call for expert registration was opened a couple of weeks ago, and it will remain open until July of this year. So we'll have 2 calls in parallel: the call for pilot regions and the call for experts. Once the pilot regions are selected, we'll review the pool of registered CCLD experts. Experts will be assessed on several criteria, most importantly, relevant experience in community-led local development or other participatory approaches to local development, but also on the experience working on cross-border governance, their experience working in different countries, and really important, obviously, language skills to ensure that the support provided is as accessible as possible to the pilot regions. Based on this assessment, we will identify between 1 and 3 suitable experts for each pilot region. The objective is really to ensure a good match between the region's needs, language requirements, and the experts' profiles. And it may be cases where we have several experts who are excellently qualified to work with the pilot region. In that case, there will be a very close engagement with the pilot region to determine which experts will be contracted. Well, before handing the floor back to Alex, just would like to highlight one critical element in the expert identification and matching process, and that's that experts should not support the preparation of a region's application and subsequently be contracted to assist that same region as a pilot. And sort of this rule is in place to ensure the integrity of the selection process and avoid any potential conflict of interest. A declaration about this is included, as some of you may have already seen, in the expert identification registration form. And all experts are asked to explicitly confirm this as part of their registration process. Alex.
Thanks, Stefan. So we have finished the part of the presentation that is dedicated to explaining the project, the call, the role and requirements for experts. And we're now going to be switching to the questions and answers. Many thanks to those of you who already have furnished questions, which has allowed us to develop an early list of FAQs. We're going to be sharing the top FAQs right now, and we'll also be compiling these into an FAQ document for your reference. And I'll tell you at the end of the presentation how we'll be sharing that for you. I will be starting, Stefan and I will be presenting the FAQs. Little note, please don't stop entering questions in the Q&A, especially if you aren't receiving the response to a question that you have in your head, because we will also be addressing those Q&A questions when we finish with the FAQs. Also, a little reminder to upvote, to click like on the questions that you see in the Q&A that mirror your own questions, because, excuse me, we'll be answering questions, we'll be prioritizing questions in that part based on how many people want to hear the responses. So we've organized the questions and answers by thematic grouping, and the first ones relate to the impact project itself. The first question is one that we've heard from many of you. Does the project provide funding or require co-financing? First of all, as Stefan has mentioned, the project does not provide any direct funding to participating regions. By the same token, it does not require co-financing from selected pilot regions. Only travel and accommodation costs for pilot region representatives will be covered. One thing that's important to note, while co-financing on the part of the participants is not required, what is required is enough human capacity to be able to carry out the project activities. So the pilot regions need to make sure that they have the staff, the human resources in order that they need to engage in the strategy design process, to work with the experts to do so, to organize local meetings, consultations, and other activities that are associated with the development of the strategy and carrying out this project. So in a nutshell, no financial contribution on the part of the partners of the participating regions is required, but we do want to see strong local commitment and the administrative capacity needed to carry out the project. That was a long response, but I hope that it answered that question. Question number 2, how can interested applicants find partners? I've seen in the Q&A chat that there is some interest in covering this question. All we can say is that it's a little bit difficult for us to provide precise guidance on where they can find the best partners for to form their pilot regions and to develop a CLLD strategy. This depends, of course, not only on your location, but also your potential thematic focus and other factors, which we, of course, are not as familiar with as you are. For this reason, we encourage the applicants to take advantage of and to build on existing cooperation structures and to engage with existing networks, things like leader networks, cross-border governance bodies, other territorial cooperation platforms to help you identify your potential partners. In many cases, of course, the best partnerships are ones that build on prior collaboration, shared strategic interests. And so that's why we recommend turning to these existing networks as a good place to start to find additional partners. Next question. Are there any thematic limitations for the strategies supported under this call? For example, are strategies expected to be broad and integrated across multiple themes, or can they focus on a specific sector such as biotourism, energy, and mobility? The answer to this is that no, there's no specified limitation on the thematic areas to be covered in the application and in the eventual strategy. The important thing is that the priorities that you identify for your pilot region, for your cross-border region, make sense. that they are relevant to your cross-border region. So with that in mind, we ask applicants, certainly in the application form, but also to develop the application form through a conversation among themselves to ensure that they have a thematic focus that's well justified and that is grounded in shared cross-border challenges or opportunities, whatever they may be. At the same time, we do want to note that focusing on too many thematic areas might serve to dilute the focus of the strategy. So if you have a long list of shared challenges, opportunities, and strategic thematic areas that you would like to address, we do ask you to do some prioritization. Next question, how many staff will be needed in total for the 2-year project? This is another one that's tough for us to answer because staffing needs will depend on a wide range of factors that you know a lot better than we do. The degree of maturity of your existing cooperation across borders, experience with CLLD. For this reason, we encourage you, applicants and partners within a cross-regional partnership, to have the discussion about what the staffing requirements would be in order to develop the CLLD strategy, participate in the other activities of the project. I will note that in the application form, you are asked to confirm that you have the operational capacity to participate in the project. So again, this is something that's important to have a discussion among yourselves and established among the partnerships. Next slide, please. Okay, so now some questions about the call for applications itself. The first one is a question that I've heard from several of you, I think in the chat as well, or in the Q&A as well. Is there a maximum number of applications or selected pilot regions per country? The answer is not really. There's no country quota. However, note that we want to arrive at a diverse portfolio of pilot regions, and that does take into account the geographical coverage and the types of regions. We want to arrive at a group of, say, 30 pilot regions that are that have some spread across the territory and represent different types of regions. Can actors be a part of or submit multiple proposals is the next question. Multiple applications from the same larger border area are certainly permitted. However, something that we want you to keep in mind is that each of those proposals should have a very clear and distinct focus. In addition, we want to note that during the evaluation process, when we're looking at all of the applications received, we'll give some consideration to, again, ensuring that the geographical coverage across the participating regions is more or less balanced or even. Next question, is there a maximum number of partners per application? Another one that I saw in the Q&A. There's no maximum number of partners per application, but we should note that the appropriate scale of the partnership should be, again, guided by that all-important rationale for collaboration. The next question is, are public or private partners preferred? Both of what we can say for this question is that the participation of both public and non-governmental actors, whether those be NGOs or businesses, is essential, as CLLD is based on those types of partnerships, bringing together multiple types of actors. Next question is one that's a little bit more specific, but I also saw it echoed in the Q&A, so we'll raise it here. Can interested applicants from Ireland, the land border with the UK, and Malta participate? First thing to note is that applicants from the UK are not eligible to participate in Impact. The absence of a land border, we should also note, does not automatically prevent you from participating in Impact. It might present practical challenges, but it does not preclude you from participating altogether. What matters, again, is the existence of a coherent cross-border territory and a credible and well-reasoned justification for why you are working together towards in line with the objectives of the call. Next slide, please. I think we have one more slide of call for applications questions, and then I'll hand it back over to Stefan. But first, let's go through these. Do all territories need to be directly on the shared border to participate? And do territories need to be continuous? This is another one that I have seen pop up in the Q&A a couple of times. The answer is no, not all territories have to be on a common border, nor do they necessarily have to share a direct border. What matters, again, is that the proposed territory forms a logical and coherent functional space, something that reflects the shared challenges, the shared needs, the shared opportunities that justify cross-border cooperation, whatever those may be. In addition to that, we do suggest that the lead applicant is an organization or an institution that is located on the border. Are sectoral agencies and research centers eligible partners? How about international NGOs? First thing is that sectoral agencies at the national level, like say a ministry responsible for education, would not be eligible to participate as partners. National government representatives are not eligible to participate in this project in pilot regions. However, sectoral agencies that might be operating on the regional level would be eligible, provided that they are a part of a cross-border partnership that meets the requirements of the call. And final thing is both research centers and international NGOs can be eligible partners. Next question, can Interreg managing authorities participate in a partnership? The answer to this is no. MAs cannot participate in a partnership as they generally include national government bodies who, as we've already discussed, are not eligible participants. However, we do want to note that MAs can be certainly involved in impact through dialogue with the pilot territories. So if you are an MA that's watching us right now, don't hesitate to reach out, and there will be opportunities to loop you in later in the project. Are established NUTS classifications a prerequisite for applying? Definitely not, because not all eligible countries have officially designated NUTS regions. Again, what matters is that the region is one that is united around a clearly defined and coherent justification, rationale, shared challenges, opportunities, or needs. There is a space I want to note, because I keep saying this, what matters is that the region kind of makes sense, that it's a functional area, or that there's a justification for these entities to work together. I just want to note that there is a space on the application to explain why your cross-border region makes sense. So there's an area for you to tell us why you think you make sense as a pilot region. Finally, on this slide, is it necessary to establish new entities to participate, like a new flag? No, it's not necessary to establish a new entity like a joint cross-border lag to participate. The important thing is that the different partners are ready to cooperate closely for the development of their joint CLLD strategy, even if they don't belong to a formal umbrella entity. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Stefan to share some FAQs related to experts.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Alex. Yes, a few questions and answers related to expert identification and mobilization. So the first question, will experts receive financial compensation? Yes, of course. Any experts engaged under the Impact Project will receive financial compensation in line with terms and conditions set out in individual contracts. In addition to professional remuneration, apologies, they'll receive a reimbursement of travel-related costs, such as transportation per diem, for example, to be able to provide in-person support, but also to participate in the knowledge exchange events organized in Paris or in Brussels. Second question, can experts come from any country? Yes, they can. What matters here is not nationality, but relevant experience with community-led local development, plus the other elements that I mentioned before. So it's country experience, ideally also experience with cross-border cooperation, and obviously language skills. Then we have third question is it possible for organizations such as universities to be selected and provide expert support? Yes, that is possible. They may be selected and contracted. However, I think here it's really important to specify that in a contract, would have to be linked, for example, with the university, it would have to be linked to the mobilization of a clearly identified expert. The engagement cannot cover, for example, general expertise that several people working for the university could provide. Now, this is really for a specific expert who meets all the requirements. Fourth question, are experts required to travel to the supported areas and are travel costs covered? Yes, yes to both. So we envision at least 1 to 2 weeks of on-the-ground support. This can be more depending on local context and needs. And obviously the travel cost will be compensated. For example, costs related to so this would include, for example, a per diem and actual compensation for the costs related to travel by car, train, plane, etc. And the final question is, how many visits to Paris or Brussels will experts need to make, or will activities take place online? So I think let me answer this in two parts. The first part relates to the support provided to the pilot regions. This is a combination of hybrid and sort of online and offline support, as already commented. In terms of the events, the knowledge exchange events in Paris and in Brussels, experts, there's no fixed or minimum number of visits. Experts may be invited to contribute to those events where their expertise is particularly relevant, but not all experts will be expected to attend all meetings. And where possible, we'll explore online participation to ensure the participation of experts that are not specifically invited to join in person, but where appropriate. And I think with this concludes the section on experts and expert registration. We'll publish these responses that Alex and I just commented in the frequently asked questions document after the webinar. But for now, let's turn to some of the other questions you have posted during the session and have upvoted one by one. Let me take a stab at a first few, and please keep the questions going so we can provide more clarity to the application and registration process. So let me scrub. Do we have to be, first question that received 9 votes, do we have to be from 2 neighboring countries? I think it's important to say that yes, it will not be, for example, possible to submit an application that involves a border region in Belgium and Poland, for example. I think 1 or 2 of the applications that we have already received so far include border regions from a wide range of countries that are not located. This is sadly not the project for that type of cooperation. CCLD, or apologies, I'm saying it again, CLD, so cross-border or community-led local development, is really a tool for relatively local level cooperation. So ideally, that's why also in the information package we refer to NUTS 3 regions, so the local level. NUTS 2 regional level could be possible, but the results are strongest for cooperation at the local level. I think that question can then be accepted. Okay, can partners come from multiple EU candidate countries, or do we need at least one partner from EU member states? Sort of as a logical consequence of what I just said, that does not have to be the case. So, for example, it can be, let's say, North Macedonia and Albania could partner together. So yes, we are happy to receive also project applications that only involve pre-accession candidate countries. Okay. Could you please clarify how border regions are defined within this program? Specifically, does eligibility apply only to communities or organizations located within a certain distance, for example, 25 kilometers from a national border? We did not include a specific definition of a border region because the local circumstances and the sort of the need for enhanced cross-border cooperation and the dynamics of cross-border cooperation depend on regional specificities. So for example, an initiative related to local tourism, there may be more of a rationale to work within a, say, 25 square kilometers distance from the border. But for other topics, it may make more sense to include a broader area. With that in mind, I understand that that may be difficult to work in the absence of such a clear definition, but we are targeting. Let me say this: we're targeting or looking particularly for project proposals that really sort of have this local dimension, so not too large, but the scale of the partnership needs to be coherent with the issues that the region wants to address. Okay. Am I correct in assuming that one of the deliverables is a local development strategy, but then on a cross-border regional scale, similar to the current leader approach? That is correct. The idea is that this project, or in a way, the commitment of the cross-border regions, is to work with this project to develop, and then it's a responsibility of the partnership to adopt a CLLD strategy during the duration of the project, and then it's the responsibility of the partnership to drive forward implementation during, but also beyond the project, as that strategy will cover a longer period. This is a long question. Does the impact project have predefined thematic priorities or strategic focus areas, or are pilot regions completely free to propose their own topics based on local needs? That's the first part. So I think, yes, the regions are free to propose their own topics based on local needs, as Alex already commented. Second part of that question is, will the selection panel consider the alignment with existing EU priorities when evaluating proposals? This is not a 100% evaluation or eligibility criteria. We'll be looking again at the coherence of the project proposal along the assessment criteria highlighted above. We may be taking those into account, but it's not a fixed evaluation element. Then the third element, if the question is, are there any excluded topics that would not be considered suitable for CLLD strategies? I do not know what you have in mind for this question, but as this, I currently cannot think of a topic that is off limits. I think we would just have to see what comes in and look at that. For example, topics related to energy, to healthcare, to economic development, all those are obviously completely eligible. Another question. So can we have one organization, for example, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and another organization from a neighboring country, regardless of distance? No. The idea would this for it to be partners on opposite sides of the border. So it cannot be, for example, a border region in country one that really borders for Bosnia and Herzegovina and Croatia, for example, but then the Croatian partner being more on the Adriatic, on the northeastern part of the country. So these would have to be ideally adjacent communities. Let's see. I'm from Latvia. Could topics like resilience of multi-stakeholder governance across Baltics in the face of military crisis threat, not just issues like depopulation, lack of investment, and climate emergency, be supported? Yes. That is correct. We expect, for example, applications from Baltic regions to focus on issues related to those. So yes, that is perfectly possible. Let's see. El archipiélago de Canarias puede participar en este proyecto. Can the Canarias archipelago participate in this project? Yes. Also, or sort of better said, maritime border regions can also participate, and also only in sort of metropolitan Europe, but also in, for example, Caribbean outermost regions of European member states, for example, they can participate. There are also border regions, for example, between Saint Martin and Saint Martin. So yes, also eligible. And again, border regions or sort of land border regions and maritime border regions can participate. Another long question. Could you please clarify the following requirements regarding the applicant's experience? 1, are the requirements for cross-border cooperation and community-led local development mandatory, eligibility clear, or are they considered as additional assets? They are experience in that are additional assets. Again, we accept proposals from those with established cross-border partnerships, with established, for example, bodies, with experience with CLLD, but also without. The key is really for there to be sort of a coherent proposal, a good justification of working together of the region that is proposing the collaboration. Sorry, so I think there are a couple. Institute from Albanian Municipalities. Let me see. Let me just take a few that are upvoted. The Republic of Moldova is interested in identifying partners for this project through the leader approach we currently cover. Okay, well, this is not a question. I don't know, Alex or Olivier, for example, if you have see any questions that you think we need to answer.
I'm seeing
yes,
one person that is.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Olivier, please.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I think there is one which is interesting. It's do pilots successfully complete the impact program, receive any preferential access or fast track consideration for future Interreg funding? It's not automatic. Of course, it's our intention for those 30 pilots to make the link with the programs in order to promote the pilots and to tell them, listen, this is a great opportunity to have a good project, which is already more or less ready. In the current programming period, it could be done using the Interreg Specific Objective 1 on governance. And in the future period, starting in 2028, the intention is indeed to promote cross-border CLLDs, and hopefully programs will have it. So it's not automatic, but indeed it's our intention to try to make the link with the programs to have the funding for the projects which will have been identified.
Thank you very much for that answer, Olivier. Alex, you saw another question you would like to have?
I've just seen a couple of questions coming through on the experts, so I wanted to clear those up. One person, and I can't find the question now, had said it wasn't clear who's contracting and paying the experts and in which way. It would be us contracting the experts and compensating them for their time and their travel. Another person asked if the experts would have to give up their jobs. Just to note that this is a part-time engagement foreseen for 4 to 6 months. So I think the answer to that would be no, as far as I'm aware, although Stefan, you can certainly provide more nuance.
I think that covers it. I'm looking for other questions, and please, if you have remaining questions, put them in the Q&A part of the Zoom screen, and upvote any questions that you agree with or would also like to see answered. Let me let's say, could you clarify whether selected applicants receive financial support? I think that's answered now. How cross-border is defined, that's also answered. Are applications open to cooperation between organizations alone, or is participation from public authorities or local administrations mandatory? Yes, as part of to make sort of as the integral part of the CLLD approach. This is a process that is led by public and by non-governmental actors. So it's not only for local authorities, and it's also not only for non-governmental actors. So this needs to be reflected in the proposals.
I have a couple of questions, Stefan, that I can respond to. A few people have been noting in the chat, I think even looking for project partners. I admire the initiative for sure. And there's another question who's asking if there is a mechanism for connecting potential participants with other potential participants or partners? That's a really good question. The answer is, under this project, we do not have an established kind of coordination mechanism to help you find your partners. And that's earlier in the presentation we had noted is we encourage you to make use of the networks that apply in your jurisdiction. For example, networks of LAGs that might be able to help connect you with other project partners. But you are in a better place to identify a partner that is relevant and that can work with you to create to create a coherent cross-border area and execute the project.
Thank you, Alex. Some additional questions. Can you clarify if partners from Northern Ireland are eligible to partner with partners in Southern Ireland? No, that is not possible within this project. There was also a question about whether regions that have EGCCs can still apply. Yes, of course. Regions that already have a cross-border governance body can apply. That is actually quite a strong asset. That is not to discourage, obviously, regions that do not have such a cross-border governance mechanism from applying. I see. Let's see. There's another longer question that I think includes some relevant elements. I would like to understand the next steps. When will the CLLD strategy be developed? How is it planned to implement this strategy? Will there be funding available for project implementation, as is currently the case with the Leisure approach? And if several LAGs from different countries are involved in this common strategy, how will the process be administered? And will LAGs have to form a joint? If there are different LAGs, will they have to form a joint LAG, or will each LAG implement separately based on a common strategy? The approach is so there will be pilot selection. If selected, you will be matched with between 1 and 3 experts. For a period of 4 to 6 months, there will be expert support to really guide the design of the CLLD strategy to be adopted, obviously, by the partnership partners. Then the implementation in a way falls outside of the scope of this initiative. As part of the expertise provided through this initiative, we can provide sort of upfront guidance and touch on the issue of implementation during the peer exchanges, but the actual implementation really falls outside the support of this initiative. And I think the question related to funding mobilization was already covered by Olivier. Again, we understand this limitation of the project to put it like that. But what we'll do is, as commented, is that we'll ensure that as part of, for example, the peer exchanges, we will cover the peer exchange events. We will cover elements related to building capacities for funding mobilization, but the project itself will not directly assist with this. It is the responsibility for the pilot regions to explore funding options, and not only through possible Interreg funding afterwards, but also other sources. In terms of existing LAGs participating, yes, for example, if there's already a LAG established on a border, but there, for example, is no LAG on the other side of the border, they can partner with public and non-governmental actors on the other side of the border. And the idea would be for them to develop and subsequently, outside the scope of this initiative, implement a joint CLLD strategy. Alex, other colleagues, or other elements questions that
I'm getting there are a couple of questions in the chat related to the issue of whether territories need to be contiguous in order to constitute a cross-border territory. this just in a nutshell, and I'm looking for the specifics right now. We haven't, as Stefan said, we have not created a single definition of what would constitute a cross-border territory. Instead, what we are doing is to ask you all to tell us why it is that you make sense, that the participating territories that are participating in your application make sense as a cross-border territory. I hope that helps. Olivier?
Yeah, maybe to add to that, because I want to avoid any misunderstanding. A CLLD, as indicated in the name, is about communities. So it's very, very local. It's smaller than NATS3. I mean, there are no rules, we don't define and so on, because it all depends. But at the end of the day, what we want is to build cross-border communities. So people who have daily interactions together. So for example, it could be a couple of villages which are just on each side of a border, but which are close so that they can have things in common. They can share a doctor, they can share a swimming pool, they can have a joint tourism publicity, they can make a trail for cyclists. You know, the idea is that it's really local. It's smaller than Interreg programs. It's really local. So that has to be kept in mind, and hence, when you understand what I said, you have the answer to many questions. So it has to be contiguous, it has to be close, on each side of the border, because what we want is that people who have the potential to have interactions, daily interactions, to work together, who share a common territory, etc., they can work together. That's what we want. We don't want to fund projects. What we want is to fund communities so that they come together and have a joint future.
Thank you, Olivier. I think that put it much more concretely than we attempted in previous slides. So thank you very much for that. So another interesting question that I would like to take: is there any blueprint of the CLLD strategy? In a way, this will be part of the what we call the strategy design package. We will provide the regions, the selected regions, and the selected experts with a set of guidelines, of possible templates, of PowerPoint presentations that build on the community-led local development guidance material that has already been developed over the past decades, that has worked, and will complement it and adjust it to make sure that it is fit and is clear for, in a way, the cross-border dimension of local-led, community-led local development. So perhaps there won't be a specific blueprint of a CLLD strategy, but we'll provide the elements and the tools and the templates necessary for the process of strategy design to be as smooth as possible. Now turning again to colleagues, Alex, Vinia, you see any other questions that we have not yet answered directly or indirectly? I think we're all scanning through the questions right now. There's another question: is there any place where we can download the online application form or see its structure? Yes, perhaps Jérôme, if you have not done so, could you provide the link to the application form in the chat or in the Q&A space, so that people can see it's an online form, but you can download it, or you can copy paste the elements and circulate it internally before filling it out. And it includes also a question on and a format for a sort of a partnership declaration that would have to be sent separately to an email account that is provided in the same form. Thank you very much, Jeroen.
There's another, there's a follow-up question for Olivier at the end. That whether an interreg project that within an interreg project application can pilot regions. So let me actually read it. Thank you, Olivier, for the clarification. So does it mean that within an interreg project application, pilot regions cannot apply for impact? Oops.
I'll try to understand the question. I guess the question is, can a project which already is funded by Interreg apply, in addition to Interreg, apply also to impact? Well, I would say yes, provided obviously it's about something different. I mean, you can't have double funding for the same. I mean, if the Interreg project is exactly to provide an expert to develop a CLLD, then obviously you cannot apply because it would be double funding. But if the Interreg project is about working on for example, tourism, and in the frame of the project, let's say as a side thing or as a spin-off of the project, you want to have a cross-border CLLD on tourism, that would be possible because it's two different things.
Thank you for that clarification, Olivier. There's also another question that is an interesting question that that we mentioned, that many border regions have performed below average, and can border regions that are performing well also apply? And yes, of course. It's not just for border regions that are facing difficulties. As Olivier said, it's really about building community CLLDs. It's about community dimension. So yes.
And actually, we are looking exactly for a good mix of pilots. The 30, they need to be, a representative mix of what is the EU. And that's why, as we said, we will try to have a geographical balance. But in the same way, we will also have to have a balance in the degree of maturity and cooperation, because the two are interesting. Countries where cooperation is more difficult, it's interesting because there you can really build something from scratch, and it's really useful. But a CLLD between two countries who are quite mature in terms of cooperation is also interesting, because then maybe you can level up. You can do something a bit more sophisticated, and that's interesting too. And that's what we are looking for, to have a variety in order to use these 30 pilots to really promote cross-border CLLD in the EU.
Thank you very much, Olivier. I think that also highlights the point, or something that we want to make sure gets reflected in the not only in the final report but also in the analytical tool. That tool is equally suitable for regions that are sort of new to CLLD, but also regions that are more experienced in CLLD and cross-border governance, that they can also use this to further strengthen their existing initiatives. There are a couple of questions that deal with maritime borders. So, for example, let me just look for it. Can neighboring areas across the sea, for example, Finland and Sweden, or Finland and Estonia, apply? Yes, that is possible. As Alex highlighted, it may not be as clear cut for such border regions as for example, land border regions, but it is possible. We very much welcome applications. Again, they need to be supported by a clear rationale, but that applies for all of them. And this also applies for non-land borders or maritime borders in Europe's outermost regions, thereby covering, for example, a question related to, I think, La Réunion and the Comoros.
I'm seeing one more question about the flexibility of the timeline and if a participating region could start working with their experts later. The answer to this is that we have the shared timeline among all of the different participating regions. We do this because for a couple of different reasons, but importantly, you're all going through the same process at the same time and coming together during knowledge sharing events to report back on progress, lessons learned, learn from each other, etc. We also, from a practical point of view, the OECD needs to see how it needs your inputs to produce our various activities of the project. So the answer to that is that everybody's more or less on the same timeline. I'd say one exception might be if we do open up subsequent calls for applications, then we would have up to 3 different cohorts that are operating on slightly staggered timelines, but not hugely staggered. So to the person asking if they could begin their work with experts next year, the answer to that is no. The current cohort, the current applications will be settled by the current cohort will be the first cohort will be settled by the end of April. Subsequent cohorts may be opened up for applications through, let's say, the summer of this year, but not any later. I hope that answered the question.
Olivier.
Yeah, I see a question which has 4 votes. I have the impression we already answered it, but it's quite important. It's about the EGTC. I think the question is whether an EGTC can apply on its own. And I would say yes, because an EGTC by definition already represents different partners. So it's a bit an exception. Usually we want partners from each side of the border. But if there is an EGTC, the EGTC can apply alone because in its composition, you have the partners from each side of the border. There was another question which I found interesting, which is, are the border regions somehow compensated for their work? And here the answer is no. Let's say the communities on each side of the border would have to work, and the only thing that would benefit, it's the expert who then would be free of charge for them, but they would have to dedicate some resources, meaning time and maybe meeting rooms and so on. And that will be actually something to be explained in the application form. I don't see any other question which we haven't answered.
I still see some coming in on the implementation part that I think we covered, but perhaps just to stress it to add some further clarity. So the question is, I still do not understand the further support for strategy implementation. I understand that there is none within the framework of this project, but what happens after that? We invest a lot of time and energy in developing a strategy, but how do we further implement it in life? Could there be any funding in the new planning period that will be directed towards implementation of such strategies? I think this goes back to, you're absolutely right in reflecting that the project will not cover the implementation part, but through the project, what we try to do is bring the regions in a position to make a very good case for mobilizing funding, whether it is from national sources or through the next generation of Interact programs, through the strategic engagement in peer exchange activities where we bring representatives from the pilot regions together with representatives from Interact. So we we provide everything that within sort of the framework of this project is possible to make sure that the pilot regions are really in a good place to make the case for funding support. So it's not just supporting a strategy and we leave it at that in that sense. You state that the support will be provided in the country's language. If the partnership involves two different languages, will the expert support be provided in both languages during joint meetings, or will there be two different experts, one for each language? This depends on the language skills of the expert or experts involved. If a particular expert that is mobilized for a region already speaks two of the regions, I think that may cover it. For others, it may be necessary to have, for example, two experts who work simultaneously. So this is has an important implications for the pilot regions, but also for the experts in terms of cooperating or working alongside and teaming up with another expert, a process that obviously the OECD will guide. Will also, as the OECD will make sure sort of to set up sort of an internal community of practice of the CLD experts to learn what is happening, what is working in the regions, to adjust the material that is provided. So there's also a learning curve and exchange among the OECD team and the contracted experts. I'm not sure if there are any other burning questions.
I'm seeing one technical question that may be worth answering live. This person has asked if they can submit their application in another form other than the Microsoft form, like a PDF or a Word document. The answer to that is no, please do use the Microsoft form. We've distributed the application form in that format in order to be able to reach a wide range of you and to make your responses easier. If the Microsoft form is not working for you, I would suggest first trying another browser or even another computer, because sometimes a firewall or a VPN can interfere with certain programs. Having said all of that, if there is a fatal issue with Microsoft Forms that is truly beyond your ability to surmount, please do send us an email and we'll help you try to figure out the form.
Perhaps with that, we can draw to a close. I'll put up two more slides. Alex, could you present those? See.
Absolutely. So first, I just want to say thank you to the 448 participants who have bared with us through this Q&A. Thank you for bearing with us as we answer your questions live. I hope that we managed to answer most of them, at least the most burning common questions. Let me take a moment to talk about next steps. So the first thing is that we will be updating and then publishing a frequently asked questions document that compiles all of the questions that we have been receiving from you all via the form that we sent out and today, and others we've received from other channels. So we will update it with everything that we've heard from you today. We will publish this as well as the PowerPoint on our webpage. The recording of the webinar we will publish on on the OECD's YouTube. Don't worry that you can't click the links here because we will also circulate to those of you who have participated in this call, or those of you who've registered in this call, the PowerPoint, which includes the relevant links. Please do submit your applications by the 10th of April via the Microsoft Forms link that we have sent you before. I'll just a note to take care to read the instructions, including the reference guide in the application form prior to applying. Then, the week that begins the 20th of April, you'll receive responses from us. Once we know which regions will be participating, we'll be selecting the CLLD experts to accompany them. And then, as mentioned earlier, if there are spots remaining for additional participating regions, then we would launch a another call for applications towards the end of April. But again, this is subject to the availability of spots, so we do encourage you to go ahead and apply. Next slide, please. This brings us to the end of our presentation. I just want to say thank you very much for your attention, for coming to us with all of your questions and your ideas as well. I also want to say thank you to Juan, Jerome, and Leslie, who are behind the scenes making this webinar happen. We're really looking forward to seeing your applications. If you do need to contact us, here is the address that you can reach us at. Again, thank you very, very much, and we look forward to seeing your applications.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us.